The news and media constantly use and repeat negative terms next to the word Islamic. Islamic terrorists, Islamic militants, Islamic extremists, Islamic fundamentalists. If Islam is repeatedly associated with these negative terms, people might assume that extremism and terrorism are Islamic, and that if you truly follow Islam, you will eventually adopt terrorism and extremism. Consider ISIS. The term ISIS is an acronym for the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. ISIS is a terrorist organization that has committed great crimes against people of many faiths. Some say it is obvious that this group of barbarians is Islamic, and the proof is in their name. They call themselves Islamic. If they call themselves Islamic, then they must be Islamic. But does that make sense? A person doesn't become smart by calling himself an academic. A person doesn't become funny by calling himself a comedian. And a group doesn't become Islamic just by calling itself Islamic. But why would ISIS call itself the Islamic State if its ideology and practices are not based on Islam? Because tyrannical groups will lie to achieve their real goals. Throughout history, they have used religion to justify their actions, while their true agenda is always power and wealth. For ISIS to truly be Islamic, it cannot contradict the Holy Quran. The Quran is Islam's primary source for ideology and practice. So let's put ISIS to the Quranic test. ISIS forces non-Muslims to accept Islam, but the Quran says in chapter 2, verse 256, "There is no compulsion in religion. Truly, the right way has become clear from error." And in chapter 3, verse 120, the Quran says, "But if they dispute with you, say, I have submitted myself entirely to Allah, and so has everyone who follows me. And say to those who have been given the book and the ummis, do you submit yourselves? So if they submit themselves, then indeed they follow the right way. And if they turn back, then upon you is only the delivery of the message, and Allah sees His servants." Forcing someone to convert to Islam is forbidden by the Quran. ISIS contradicts the Quran, so ISIS is not Islamic. ISIS kills innocent people, but the Quran says in chapter 5, verse 32, "For this reason did we prescribe to the children of Israel that whoever slays a soul, unless it be for manslaughter or for mischief in the land, it is as though he slew all men, and whoever keeps it alive, it is as though he kept alive all men." The killing of innocent people is clearly forbidden by the Quran. ISIS contradicts the Quran, so ISIS is not Islamic. Opponents say we're only quoting verses that are peaceful, while there are many verses that are clearly violent. For example, the Quran says in chapter 2, verse 191, "And kill them wherever you find them." For those who say that Islam is a religion of peace, this verse might be very troublesome, but we soon realize that this is just a phrase from a verse, and the verse is part of a larger context. The real trouble is the false meanings created by those who quote phrases and verses out of context. So what does the Quran really say? The passage from verses 190 to 193 says, "And fight in the way of Allah with those who fight against you, and do not exceed the limits. Surely Allah does not love those who exceed the limits. And kill them wherever you find them, and drive them out from where they drove you out. And persecution is severer than slaughter. And do not fight with them at the sacred mosque until they fight with you in it. But if they do fight, then fight them. Such is the recompense of the unbelievers. But if they desist, then surely Allah is forgiving, merciful." The meaning becomes clear when read in its context. Fight against those who have attacked you. Do not exceed the moral limits of just battle. Kill the enemy wherever you find them. Take back the lands they stole from you. If they stop fighting, you also stop fighting. It does not say to kill or terrorize innocent people. To deliberately quote a verse like 2:191 out of context is dishonest and deceitful. To do it from ignorance is also inexcusable because it's blatantly careless and negligent. An intelligent person would not dare quote a phrase and disregard its proper context. Let's be clear. There are no verses that allow Muslims to injure, fight, or kill any innocent person. There is no contradiction between peaceful and violent verses because violent verses do not exist in the Quran. There are only passages that allow Muslims to fight aggressors. And that fighting has strict limits. In an address to soldiers fighting against ISIS, Ayatollah Sistani has expressed these limits. These are excerpts from that address. "God has called for jihad and has privileged the warriors. It is necessary then to learn these conditions and etiquettes of jihad thoroughly. Do not indulge in acts of extremism. Be attentive to the sanctity of the human souls. Be attentive to the sanctity of the lives of those who do not fight, such as the weak, children, women, even of families of those who fight you. Do not condemn others to heresy. The Muslim must protect his non-Muslim neighbors in the same manner and vigor as he would when he protects his own family. Do not steal the money of others. Do not disrespect the corpse of the dead. And if you defeat the men of your enemies, do not violate the sanctity of their women and houses. Do not enter their homes. Do not verbally abuse their women. Do not deprive any people who do not fight you of their rights. Know that most of those who fight you are victims who have been led astray by others. Do not resort to oppression. Corruption can only be cured by justice. It may be the case that when you adhere to good conduct and discipline, you suffer losses. This, nevertheless, is more spiritually rewarding. Everyone must let go of sentiments that carry hatred and bigotry. Is ISIS Islamic? The answer is a simple no. Islam is a religion of peace that allows self-defense. Whoever commits crime and terrorism is un-Islamic. Therefore, ISIS should be called USIS, the un-Islamic state in Iraq and Syria.